Hello, everyone, and welcome to another podcast edition of Rosen Sports Monday on this glorious Monday morning in March, which means only one thing. A snowstorm will be coming soon because that's the way we roll in Minnesota. We still have high school tournaments to go, and I've lived here my whole life, and I guarantee you there's at least one more good snowstorm coming, and maybe two before it's all over. But in the meantime, let's put a smile on our faces. It's mid-March. We got tournaments going on. And with me today in studio, as they say, is the one and only Kevin Gorg, who is a very, very busy man these days. And, you know, there's a lot to talk about going forward. We were just chatting off air about how the National Football League is never out of season. And this is a perfect example with free agency this week, the clock sort of ticking on restricted free agents. You can start, signing people on Wednesday, but you'll get all stuff leaked out by all these so-called experts. What the Vikings are going to do with the quarterback situation. Kevin, it's exhausting even thinking about, but this is how the NFL stays in season all the time.
What a brilliant league, right? I think every league tries to look at the NFL and find out that secret sauce. How are they relevant 12 months out of the year? Every single year, it always matters what they're doing. And kudos to the league, right? And I think going back to when I first started cutting my teeth on NFL football. I'll go back to the 70s and the 80s, the Purple People Eaters. The NFL was the first league to embrace gambling. And the injury reports, the betting spreads, the pools, fantasy football. Like, this is the one that's been the benchmark. And you're seeing other leagues fall in line. And National Hockey League finally there. PGA Golf finally there. It was all set up by the NFL. Jimmy the Greek, your channel back in the day, WCCO. Man. But that's where it all started, and it's been crazy ever since.
And Jimmy the Greek was criticized, too, because he was getting too personal about his own bets, I think, that he was making on the air.
So good. Now it's
all we do. Again, we could do an hour on the wagering and what goes on and how the leagues have all embraced it now, where they're posting live odds during the course of whatever game you're watching.
100%.
And they don't even have to even audibly mention it, but here they are. The Wild are minus 145 right now, after taking a lead against Colorado, whatever the case may be. It's crazy how it's all gambling has infiltrated every aspect because of our devices, and how many. That's a whole other story we're going to get into. Hey, listen, we'll skip over the NFL for now because there'll be plenty of time to talk about what the Vikings did or did not do. We don't know yet, other than the fact that they've, as of this recording right now, they've signed Eric Wilson to come back, which I think is a great move. But the big question mark remains the QB, who's going to be the guy coming in. And the wild speculation continues to be that Kyler Murray is going to be the guy, that it's the best fit, et cetera, et cetera. But, I mean, what role is he going to play? How does J.J. McCarthy fit? This is what I'm talking about. We could do an hour on all this stuff, but we're not going to.
We're going to wait.
We're going to wait. So let's talk your favorite sport, hockey, and what a week it was for you and for all of Minnesotans to embrace with the state high school hockey tournament. And I was watching, video of some of the old stories, and here you are, Kevin Gorg, on a special visual, I think that we did on Channel 4.
It was Channel 4, Pat Doyle?
Steve Doyle.
Steve Doyle,
did a thing. I mean, long before the technology like we have today. You were a goalie, of course, for Burnsville. What year was that now?
85 was my senior year. They came out and strapped the camera. They duct taped it to my helmet.
Right.
And they started by putting the camera on the net, and then they moved it to my helmet. And as I told you walking in today, I'm an idiot because I could have invented the GoPro and been a billionaire. I wouldn't be sitting here right now. I'd be at some beautiful, warm location at parts unknown. But no, incredible footage, right? Every one of my teammates, of course, now shooting at my head to try to knock the camera off the helmet. But for Steve Doyle and that crew, a brilliant idea. Like, I don't know where they even came up with it to put you in the eyes of a goaltender, because people always talked about goalies and what they deal with.
Sure.
And when they brought that camera out, they wanted to give people the perspective, put them in the crease, so to speak. And remember, this is 1985. Now you can surf with a surfer. You can go downhill with a skier. The GoPro has changed the way we take that in. But in 1985, that was crazy. We had never seen anything like it.
No, it was looking at something like a archaic, they just landed on the moon. I mean, that kind of a camera that they put, because they wanted to, for the first part, take a look at what it looks like to have a goalie face hockey pucks at full speed. and you were the guinea pig.
I was the guinea pig. And it was funny because as I watch that back, it strikes me, 41 years ago, I look completely different. I sound completely different. But then I look back and, it really did an amazing job because I lived that position. I know what it looked like to watch that blur of rubber come firing at you from 30, 40 feet out. When you watch that back, it took me back to that spot where I was a goalie. And it was like really cool to watch that back. And I hadn't seen it in years. It feels like, though, during tournament time, every once in a while, that gets shuffled back out. It's good fun.
Well, it's fun to see all those pieces that we did at Channel 4, and they pop up, once a year or whatever the case may be, and it's okay. But it's not to take anything away from what we witnessed this weekend. I know you were here for part of it. You had responsibilities with the Wild as well, so you were kind of going back and forth between St. Paul and on the road with the Wild. But 2 overtime classics in A and AA, Warroad against Hibbing Chisholm, and then Moorhead with their stirring comeback over number 1 ranked Minnetonka. I mean, whatever people think nationally, even of the perspective of the state high school hockey tournament, pretty hard to top what we saw this weekend. It keeps getting better and better. And it doesn't matter if who the teams are, but in this case, Warroad, and you think of Hockeytown, USA.
Yes.
And the going back to Henry Boucher. I mean, it's unbelievable to think of the legendary players, but how they still produced the caliber of hockey players in such a small town year after year. And here they are with champions again.
Yeah, remarkable stuff for Warroad. And I just think the tournament in general, it's cliche, Rosie, but the tournament really does always deliver. We saw unbelievable skill plays. I was working Wednesday in the Class A, and a kid went between his legs and went upper shelf. We saw the big kerfuffle with Edina and Moorhead. And then you see the best teams throughout the weekend kept winning. And so you end up with these 2 championship games where throughout the year, Warroad and certainly Hibbing were 2 of the best 3 ranked teams. Delano was absolutely in that mix. On the AA side, Moorhead and Minnetonka were 1-2 all year. They were the 2 best teams all year long. It rarely works out that way, but you got that on championship Saturday. So to see those games go into overtime, AA go into multiple overtimes was unbelievable. And then the Warroad story, as good as they've been, they hadn't won a state championship in 21 years.
Think about it.
And then you look at poor Hibbing, who's had these great teams, and this was the team. They haven't won in 50-plus years. 1973, the last time they had won a championship. You have the late lead, right? You're Hibbing. You're about to win.
Like 45 seconds away, I think.
Warroad pulls the goalie. They tie it up, and now they've got momentum, and you're like, uh-oh. And credit to Jay Hardwick, a dear friend of mine, their head coach. He's done a remarkable job with that program. They got momentum back. They seized it. And they made a brilliant play in overtime. The one thing I always hope for when I see high school tournament games, especially championship games, going to overtime is I don't want to see a bad goal for the goalies.
Right.
And I thought both goals were terrific plays, terrific shots, and the drama was unbelievable.
You played with some tremendous players and went on to have success not only collegiately, but even in the NHL. I mean, you watch these teams play, the Final Four, if you want to look at it that way. How do you compare like this overall skill level? I mean, is it the depth of the teams that they have right now that might be a little bit better? What's your perspective?
I think kids these days are a little bigger and stronger. I think the training is different than we had. We had summer hockey schools. We had just kind of really figured out what the weight room meant to success on the rink. Scott Bloom, who was our best goal scorer up front, could shoot the puck like most I haven't seen. His shot would still translate, even with the different equipment these days. A guy like Donnie Granato, who ended up being an NHL coach, Marco Siki, shot blocking extraordinary. We had some tremendous players, but the kids these days are just a little more skilled. And even though we played a lot of outdoor hockey and we had that pond hockey mentality where you saw back in the 80s some higher scoring games and some great plays, the game's more physical now. The game is faster paced now. And I've had a chance to watch high school hockey up close and personal. Hockey day, a lot of times I'm ice level between the benches. The kids are just better now. And that's okay, right? Like I'm talking 40 years ago. And the equipment, I look at the goaltenders specifically, back when I played, I was 5'9", and I was probably average height. 5'9" now is tiny for that position. Even at the high school level, these kids are all above 6 feet tall. You look at Jake Ottinger, who's gone on from high school hockey in Minnesota to be one of the best in the world. He's 6'5". You look at this kid at St. Thomas, this Ryan goaltender. He looks like a tremendous prospect. He's 14 years old, Rosie. He's 6'4" already, and he's an unbelievable goalie. We didn't have that, so it's a little different.
You also didn't have hockey here like they have today.
God.
The bleaching of the hair.
We didn't do that back then. I wish we would have, because back then I actually had hair. In '86 when I got to the USHL and played for the Des Moines Buccaneers, I had a mullet with a permanent back. I looked kind of like Adam Sandler in that
funny.
throwback movie. But no, I mean, listen, it's a part of the tournament's charm. The hockey hair thing that John King has cultivated. It's amazing, and it's amazing how much these teams, coaches, managers now embrace it. I mean, we saw Spider-Man on the bench. I mean, we saw these great, solid gold outfits. These managers are doing the bit where they're Secret Service. It's
fun.
The tournament the bottom line is there's something magical about our state hockey tournament, and I'm really proud that wherever I go in my NHL travels, that's people want to talk about.
In our society, we always want to have the ultimate winner. We want to crown a champion, not two. But I think in this case, and people have long accepted the two-class system, I don't think there's this thing saying people really want to see like Warroad play Moorhead to determine a real champion. They both won their championships, and deservedly so, and I think people accept that now.
Oh, I think if you watched the way the weekend progressed, and I think, again, I grew up in an era where there was one, and it was a different era for sure. But if you look at the landscape of hockey now, and their numbers are an issue. Like, listen, it's not easy to raise a hockey player for these families. And when you look at the smaller communities,
right, I
think you have to give them a chance to play on a big stage. And so I think you would be missing something if we weren't able to see that tournament the way it played out, and now you're missing 6 or 8 of those teams. I don't think that would have been a good thing. And you're getting great hockey at both levels. And I don't need to have one champion. I can look back and say, you know what, for the small schools, Warroad had an unbelievable season. They got the trophy. They deserve that. On the other side, same thing with Moorhead, and I don't think anyone's complaining.
It was suggested, I saw more than a couple times over the weekend, that some network is missing an opportunity to carry one of these games live. And there's so much availability these days with cable channels, et cetera, and there's been so much publicity about the state high school hockey tournament, and it gets a lot more of, obviously, when you have games like we saw over the weekend, that it's a little bit surprising that a cable network hasn't picked up at least a championship game to show it. Because I think, the people who love hockey, and it's become an international sport, we know that, especially even in the Sun Belt states, that people would enjoy probably watching it. God, I've heard so much about this. Maybe we'll see that happen someday. I don't know.
And I think locally you'd have to black it out clearly with KSTP having the rights. They've earned that. They've paid for that. But I don't disagree. I've turned on one of the 18 ESPN channels and seen high school basketball.
Correct. Football.
Regular season. I've seen football on some of the Fox Sports 1 and Fox Sports 2 networks. Even our network, FanDuel, has aired some Texas high school football. When you look at the championship weekend in Minnesota, and you would put that on TV, and even if people across the country have no idea what Moorhead and what Warroad and some of these, but you just watch the hockey and you see the crowds around that. I got back in time to go to the championship AA game. They sold 19,700 tickets to that game. And so I think it would be worthy, and I think people would watch.
Yeah, it's something that every single year we talk about it, but more than lived up to the hype this weekend as well. We're going to take a break. We're going to hear from our wonderful sponsor, Lexus of Wayzata, Lexus of Maplewood. I just mentioned I went out a couple of weeks ago, and I leased my first Lexus, and I am so damn happy with it, thanks to my friend Charlie Swanson. And got the Lexus RX, and it drives like a dream. So let's hear from our sponsor. We'll come back and talk a lot of Minnesota Wild. There's so many aspects to talk about this hockey team as down the stretch we come, using your favorite horse racing term. Stay with us here. Kevin Gorg with us on Rosen Sports Monday. Hey, Rosie here for Lexus of Wayzata and Lexus of Maplewood. If you're in the market for a new luxury vehicle, look no further than my good friend Charlie Swanson at Lexus. Whether you're on the west or the east side of the Twin Cities, they have got you covered with 2 great locations, Lexus of Wayzata and Lexus of Maplewood. Check out the all-new Lexus TX, a spacious SUV with 3 rows of seating and plenty of room for all your gear. Head over to LexusofWayzata.com or LexusofMaplewood.com for details and to find your next ride today. Thanks again to Lexus, and thanks again to Kevin Gorg for stopping in here. I know you mentioned during the state high school hockey tournament you had responsibilities with the Minnesota Wild, had a very successful weekend overall, playing some of the top teams in the NHL, starting with Tampa Bay. They beat them at home decisively.
Yeah, 5-1.
5-1. Went out to Vegas, a team that's been struggling a little bit, but they're still the Vegas Knights. And then had, games against, of course, the Colorado Avalanche on national TV yesterday, and lost in the shootout, which is no big deal. But lots going on with this team I want to get your thoughts on, because Billy Guerin was pretty active at the trading deadline. Wasn't like a big splash, but he added some pieces. I want to get your theory about how that fits into what the Wild are trying to do down the stretch, and more importantly, heading into the postseason.
Yeah, I thought that there were two schools of thought coming to trade deadline, and he had made the big move to bring in Quinn Hughes. And I thought Billy Guerin made a great point when he talked to the media this week. Like, he waited this summer and was criticized. Craig Leopold had said we're going to have Christmas in July, and the fans were disappointed, and rightfully so. I get all of that. But because Billy waited, he had the ammunition to go out and make the biggest move of the year so far in the National Hockey League by bringing in Quinn Hughes. It was an aggressive move, and now a couple months later, it looks like really a franchise and team-changing move, Rosie. So with that being said, coming to the deadline, there was the talk of Vincent Trocheck. That was where it kept coming back to it. Mm-hmm. A top two line, so top six forward that can play in the middle, that's a right-handed shot. And a lot of talk was around they're going to likely have to use Jesper Wallstedt, who's one of their biggest trade pieces. And then you got Ryan Hartman, and you've got Charlie Stramel at Michigan State, and you've got that 27 first-round draft pick. Billy went a different direction. He hung on to those big pieces, maybe something this summer, maybe not. And he went out and made sure this team got a little bigger, got a little stronger, and got a little deeper. And the move that stands out to me last week, and we were in Vegas, trade deadline day, we're all scrolling, watching our phones, we were at practice, everybody's on pins and needles. David Jiricek, who I didn't think they could move. I really thought that the struggles that he's had have been well documented here in Minnesota. He's a big kid. He's a really good kid. Just hasn't taken, right? And they gave up all those draft picks, first, second, third, and fourth for him, right? We get that. But now, can you move this guy and get something serviceable? And I was talking with Wes Walls, who knows the game inside and out. He's like, maybe you get a third rounder for him. Maybe you get a fourth rounder for him. They go out and get Bobby Brink from Philadelphia, who's 24 years old and a terrific player. So I thought that was the move, but they made a bunch of moves.
Getting back to Quinn Hughes, whatever, we didn't get a chance. I mean, we as hockey fans, I think we don't watch a lot of Vancouver Canuck hockey. It's just they're not on TV very often. Might be familiar with the name, obviously his brother, et cetera, et cetera. This may go down, and obviously a lot of it has to do with re-signing the young man.
Correct.
As one of the greatest trades in the history of Minnesota sports, forgetting about just hockey, what he's done and I hate to make the comparison, but I do it anyway because I'm old enough to remember Bobby Orr, and I'm not saying he's Bobby Orr reincarnate, but Bobby Orr had the ability to never be knocked off the puck, to always have eyes in the back of his head and have this playmaking ability like no one other. I can't remember watching a defenseman who's got that skill set the way that Hughes does.
And I'll take another level. We all follow the league extremely closely.
Right.
We're in it, and we're in Vancouver. We're seeing the Canucks. We all knew he was a great player. I mean, we all watched and said, yeah, this guy is a really good defenseman, top 2 or 3 in the world. Until you watch him on your team and impact your roster and see what he does for the Minnesota Wild on a daily basis, the way he practices, the way he's changed the power play, the way he's changed everybody on that roster, but specifically Brock Faber. And Faber was a great player without him. He's just taken Brock's game to another level because they're so good playing off each other. I'll be the first to admit it. When that trade came down, I was like, we just gave up a lot. And now looking back, I'm like, I'd do it again in a blink. I mean, it's just an amazing, aggressive move by Bill Guerin. And I know people, you can say what you want about Billy G, but if you look at some of the moves this guy has made, and I look back at how they got Brock Faber when Kevin Fiala was not really going to be a player the Wild could afford to sign, and they were able to get him in a first-round pick. He has made some incredible moves. You look at the move he made to get Jake Middleton for a goaltender that has not been able to play at the National Hockey League level then and since. This guy's aggressive. He's unafraid, and a stark reminder that he's won cups as a player. He's won cups as a manager. He knows what a team looks and feels like. And so when he goes out and makes this move for Quinn Hughes, shame on anybody for having any doubt.
I'm asking you, Kevin Gorg, to put on your GM hat, and I know it's speculation, and we got hopefully a long playoff run to worry about and think about and hopefully rejoice in. But Quinn Hughes is going to be a free agent, and we know that this is the case, and Billy Guerin hasn't shied away from it. What sense do you have about how he's enjoying, obviously, his time here, fitting in, but more importantly, how he wants this to be his future home on the road?
I've been watching closely because, we knew the roll of the dice that this was, for Billy, because he's got this year and the next year on the books. And so you would think this summer would be the time they would be their opportunity to re-sign him. And so right away, I saw the friendship day one start to develop with Kirill Kaprizov, almost inseparable in those first couple of weeks. The chemistry off the ice, the chemistry on the ice with Kirill is easy to see when you watch the Wild on the power play. And then the way he's been able to mesh with Brock Faber. Brock is a heavier player, and so I think you need that when you've got a guy like Quinn Hughes. When pucks get chipped in that Dallas series, coming up here in April, you're going to see Brock Faber take a brunt of the hits. He's going to go back there and be the first one to get the puck, get it to Quinn, and then Quinn can start to work his magic. I think he loves that, and I think he also loves, and I think I've talked to enough players in my 20 years on the job, when you play in Minnesota, it's a great hockey market, but it's not New York. It's not Detroit or Chicago. It's a smaller market where you can kind of be left alone. And the one thing I'll tell you about Quinn Hughes, getting to know him off the ice, is he's not looking for a lot of attention. And I know that flies.
You can see that in the Olympics.
Right? Like and I know he's been on SNL, and I know he's been on Jimmy Fallon. I get that. And he's doing that with his brother, and he's doing that because it's great for the game of hockey. It's great for the Wild, and it's great for the league. But that is not something he searches out. When you put a camera and microphone in front of him, he's unbelievably awesome to talk to. But when you see him around the hotel, around the airport, around the rink, he does his own thing, and that's just who he is. He's a quiet kid. He's myopic in his focus on the game of hockey. I think that's why him and Kirill have become such good friends. So, and Billy Guerin has rolled out the red carpet. He's got a great team here for him. They won the gold medal together over in Milano. So I would be extremely surprised if they don't re-sign him.
Well, we just got through talking at the beginning about what the Vikings are going to do at quarterback, and you talk about the quarterback, the most important position maybe in all of sports. And you look at a Quinn Hughes being the quarterback of this hockey team and the difference he's made and potentially will make in the postseason. You think that this is not the same team without him. No. I mean, you keep this guy healthy, and which is my next question. And how does John Hines kind of massage the new acquisitions that they have, and they got to kind of fit pieces in, because they got how many games regular season?
19 games left, and you've got 5 lines of forwards and 4 sets of D right now, which it sounds like a lot. And to your point, there's going to be some massaging here, but I do think as the dust settles here in the next couple of weeks, and it looks right now like it's for sure going to be Dallas in the first round, I'll be very curious to see how John Hines gets some of his key players a little rest. Remember, if you're going to win, not just against Dallas, but make a cup run, you're going to have to play a ton of minutes if you're Brock Faber, Matt Boldy, and Quinn Hughes. I'll use those 3 as the example. They did not have an Olympic break. Everybody, talks about the Olympic. Even the Swedes got bounced early enough where they got a week off. They had no time off, Rosie. They came right back in after playing for that gold medal and partying for 2 days. They came back in and played 3 games in 4 nights. And all 3 of these guys play a ton of minutes. So with the depth they have, my guess is at some point they're going to spot, and I know load management's more of an NBA thing, but if I'm John Hines and you're playing Dallas, you got to get these guys some rest. And I think he'll mix things up. He'll try different combinations. It's a great problem to have.
The one, I think, Achilles heel that people point to that the Wild have been able to escape the first round of the postseason for quite a few years now is the fact that they just haven't been physical enough in those series. And that the game changes drastically in the postseason. And you mentioned they're going to be playing the Dallas Stars in all likelihood in the first round, which you can look at the matchups right now. But what the Wild have done with some of their acquisitions, are they physical enough now? Are they a more physical hockey team to withstand what they're going to be facing in the postseason?
They're a pretty good combination. And I think, Michael McCarron has come in his first couple of games in a Wild sweater and made quite an impression. Big, strong guy, 6'6", 250, 60 pounds. He's got some offensive skill, but he's going to be a penalty kill guy. He's going to be a 4th line guy. When you look at the potential, Rosie, to put Nick Foligno out there with Marcus Foligno and Michael McCarron, that is a really dangerous 4th line, because they've got enough offensive skill to beat you if the chance presents itself, but they are going to wear you down with physical play. And I think the combo platter comes from the fact that Jared Spurgeon, Quinn Hughes, Jonas Brodin, even these are lighter players. So you're going to need the Bogosians, the Middletons, the Fabers, the beef on that blue line to step up. And then you've got some depth right now you're going to have injuries in the Wild, that's the one thing I'll say. You can be critical about the first round exits. It's been a factor, but they've done so without key players every single year. When you're missing a Joel Eriksson, when you're missing a Kirill Kaprizov, when you're missing one of those defensemen I mentioned, it's been a challenge. My biggest hope for them on April 18th when the playoffs start is that they're healthy and their goaltending is trending in the right direction. And right now, and again, we're way too early, but right now the goaltending is absolutely ascending, and they are close to being healthy. Johansson should be back this week, probably Foligno the week after, but I want that on April 18th.
Well, John Hines is going to have some issues only because they're going to have some healthy scratches sitting up in the press box near you or down by the ice because you can't suit them all up. And that's going to be an interesting juggling act, I think, to kind of figure out. And I'm sure already they're planning for Dallas. They know what they're going to be facing. And they have 2 regular season games left, the Stars. Is that correct?
That is. And that'll likely depict if one team can win both of those games, who gets home ice in that series. I will say this right now. I don't think home ice really matters in that series. I really don't. The Wild have been one of the best road teams in the National Hockey League all year long. What's interesting is I'll use Robbie Fabry as an example, a player they got a little earlier this week. He's a veteran player. He's a very useful player. He plays with speed and skill. He came in, played against Tampa, played well. He's played a couple of games, looked good. Healthy scratch in Colorado. Bill Guerin and John Hines, both when they met with the media this past weekend when we were in Vegas, talked about the conversations they had with all the players they brought in, explaining to them the situation at hand. This is a cup contender. This is a team that we want to have some depth with, but this is a team where you're going to have to pick and choose your spots. We might not use you every night. That doesn't mean we don't love you as a player or a person, but if you can't do that, then we're not going to do it. The conversation had been had, and I think these guys are mature players that can handle it because there are going to be some really tough decisions for John Hines and his staff if this team is fully healthy.
Under the heading of there's not a damn thing you can do about it, so quit bitching about it. The playoff format is what it is, and you got 3 of the maybe 4 best teams in hockey sitting right there with Colorado, Dallas, and, of course, the Wild. 2 of them will face each other. The Wild will, in all likelihood, because they're not going to catch Colorado, play Dallas in the opening round, and then the winner gets Colorado. Colorado plays whom? They'll play who?
They'll likely play a team like Utah or Seattle, and they'll likely win. They're going to be a heavy favorite. But I'll say this, it sucks, and I don't like the format, and that's cool. Yeah. This is the format you've been given. The silver lining for me is if you're a team like Minnesota or Dallas and you win that first round series, you've won the hardest series in the entire league, all right? And if you come out of there, you're going to be playing great hockey. You're likely going to be going in the right direction. And then let's say you're able to take down Colorado. Those might be the 2 hardest series you have. And so now, I'm not saying that the conference final is going to be a cakewalk, but we just watched the Wild sweep Vegas in the season series. I'd have a hard time envisioning an Anaheim or a San Jose or any of those other teams in the Pacific beating a team like Minnesota or Dallas in that conference final. So it's tough. It's going to make for a really tough first-round series, which has been a big, big deal around here for the Minnesota Wild. But if they're able to get through that, I think, again, you play Colorado playing your best hockey, you give yourself the best chance. I think both Dallas and Minnesota are the 2 best teams to beat Colorado because they've got goaltending. I don't think you can beat the Avalanche without goaltending. And Jake Ottinger in Dallas is world-class. The Wild have 2 guys, as we saw again yesterday in Denver, that are more than capable.
Well, let's talk about that as a former goaltender yourself and get your perspective, because Wallstead, who was mentioned a lot, as you mentioned, in trade deadlines and was not moved and had a terrific game yesterday, losing in a shootout. How do you think John Hines will approach us with Gus Bus and Wallstead now, who played awfully well in tough conditions yesterday? You go with the hot goalie normally, and you kind of want to ride that person, but what's the method to madness in getting to win 4 games in a tough series against the Dallas Stars with the goaltending situation?
Well, I'll start with Wally because I think that the trade deadline really was wearing on him. And if you look at his play leading into that, it wasn't his best work. Yesterday, it looked like the guy we saw throughout most of the first half of the season. He's a remarkably talented kid. He's a great kid. He's a team-first kid. But it's going to be Gustafsson's net. So when you page forward to April 18th, right, NHL playoffs, Philip Gustafsson is going to be the man. He's got the big game experience, whether it's playoffs, whether it's 4 Nations, or whether it's Olympics. Even though the Olympics this year didn't go his way, he's come back and played his best hockey of the season. I mean, we're talking now a handful of starts where he's been at his very best. It's going to be his net. But the cool thing now is by not moving Wally at the deadline is if he struggles, if he gets hurt, like last year he got sick, Now you've got a guy, and you've got a guy that's capable of winning you a series in Jesper Wallstedt. I'll look back at what the Wild had in Fernandez and Rolison. It's the only time we've been treated to any kind of a playoff real run, right, to the conference finals in 2003. Yeah. Both guys made contributions. Jacques Lemaire figured it out. I think John Hines, with his goaltending coach, Freddie Shabbat, will get it figured out.
Well, everyone's got stars on their teams, and the Wild have the two big ones are obviously Kaprizov and now Matt Boldy. What are your thoughts on the ascension of Matt Boldy, and obviously watching him in the Olympics and watching him dominate of late, because it seems like he's really hit his stride, and he's a legitimate threat every time he steps on the ice.
He might be their best player. The cool thing now is you can argue three guys for the Wild's best player: Quinn Hughes, Kirill Kaprizov, and now Matt Boldy. What I like so much about Boldy is how hard he works. This is a kid that's put the time in. I think Matt Boldy was a benefactor of coming into the NHL and coming into the Minnesota Wild while Kirill Kaprizov was here, because Kirill kind of dragged him in to that whole staying after practice and working on your hands and working on your puck skills, because Boldy early on was kind of shadowing Kirill and learning the craft. And as I mentioned earlier, the thing that binds players like Quinn Hughes and Kirill Kaprizov together is just how myopic they are. They truly love being at the rink. They are just hockey lovers, rink rats, if you will. And Boldy now has become that guy. When we walk over to let's say the Wild are practicing tomorrow morning, you get to practice. Boldy's out there in his street shoes working on his puck skills. He's got the stick handling drill he does for about 15 minutes out on the ice. Then he does shooting. Then he goes and gets dressed, practices. Then he stays after the rink, and it's Kirill, it's Zuki, it's Quinn, it's him working on all these contests, these shooting and passing drills. It's one thing to have talent. It's another thing to work. And Matt Boldy has done this with incredibly hard work behind the scenes, and now it's being paid off as one of the best players in the league.
Again, we're mentioning, talking to Kevin Gorg about the stiff competition the Wild will face, hopefully in the first two rounds. Dallas took our hockey team. They won a cup. Colorado's won cups. The Wild have not got back to the Western Conference Finals since 2003. They barely gotten past the first round. How badly does this team, especially with the talent that they have, need to at least advance right now? And I don't want to be satisfied looking at that. Oh, if we get past Dallas, great season. I think if they get that far, if they beat Dallas, you're going to get hungry and hungrier to do more. And obviously Bill Guerin and owner Craig Leopold feel this team can go all the way. And I heard even the national guys talking. This is a legit Stanley Cup type team if they can win the first round series.
They're one of the best 3 or 4 teams in the league. That cannot be argued. We've seen enough games now, 60-plus games, to know, Rosie, that is real. Then you look at the betting market. I was just out in Vegas. I wanted to maybe put a couple bucks on the Wild. And they're 10, 12 to 1. It's like, come on.
Yeah. Are they 12 to 1?
Yeah, they've been bet down. And that to me is a compliment to who this team is and what they can be. There's no question for the core guys on this hockey team, the Folignos, the Brodins, the X, the Spurgeons, that is a thing. And I mean it. That is something that weighs on them. I know them. I know how much they care. I know how much it bothers them. But the cool thing with what Billy Guerin has cultivated here as he's built this hockey team, Quinn Hughes knows nothing of that, right? Like he knows none of it. Matt Boldy barely knows it. It's been a couple of years for Matt Boldy. The rest of the guys they brought in at the deadline are all brand new. And so you've got an interesting mix of players. And I think the swagger that they're playing with right now tells me that they're different. And it's not going to be easy. And it's likely going to go 6 or 7 games. And you're going to have everybody playing at their best to beat Dallas. But I think this team is built to make a run. I think this group feels different. I think it's a team that for many years has been lucky and not completely like bought into the fact like we can do the unthinkable. We can go all the way. This group feels different. When you talk to them, when you watch them, when you see it, this team knows they're legitimately ready to roll.
You've been around the sport for a long time and understand the psyche and psychology of the players. And I'm not saying other sports don't have that same zest to win a championship, but, they always have that saying, because it's the cup. I mean, there's something about, no one's talking salaries right now. No one's talking about bonuses. No one's talking about what the players will make if they advance for this round or that round. It's always about getting your hands on that Stanley Cup. That seems to be driven much more so than NFL free agency or what the NBA is doing or Major League Baseball and all the issues that they have going right now with the labor problems they're having. Hockey is unique in that way. And that's what I think Minnesota fans in particular, a whole generation has grown up without having been able to taste that opportunity, at least to get that far. You can only dream what St. Paul would be like in late May and early June to have that happen here, because it's been so long since we've been able to enjoy that.
I've lived through a couple of cup runs, as you have as well, 81 and 91 with the North Stars, and the state, the community, the way it rallies around, the fact that you can wear shorts to a hockey game, the tailgating, St. Paul will be on fire. It'll be an unbelievable experience. What I have never experienced is a cup run with social media and all the fun you can have with that. You know, I remember you were a big part of Tom Bernard and the KQ Morning Show. They would have those songs in 91, the wreck of the Edmonton Oilers, right? They had the Stanley Cup related songs that go along with it. It would be an unbelievable thing. And what I'll tell you about hockey players, and I'll use Matt Boldy as an example. In other sports, high-end talent starts at the highest point and just keeps going. A guy like Matt Boldy started in Iowa. He cultivated his skills in the minor leagues. He earned his opportunity to be an NHL player and then got to be a superstar by working hard. NHL guys are built a little bit differently that way, where a lot of them, unless you're a McDavid or a McKinnon, have to put their time in to get where they need to go. And
they've been on the bus rides.
They have. And then you look at the way the season plays out, where it's 82 games, it's fast-paced, it's physical. Now, I can only speak to a lot of the first and second round exits I've covered, but what blows me away, Rosie, is we will have that end-of-the-year press conference where the coach and some of the key players will stand up and talk about the disappointment and what went wrong and why didn't they get there. And then at the end, Billy Guerin talks and rattles off 5 and 6 different players every year that are going in for major surgery after they just got done playing. And that's one series. So when people talk about winning the Stanley Cup, when it's 4 consecutive 7-game in your face, physical, fast-paced series, I marvel at after an 82-game schedule.
You have to be of a certain age, but are we past the bitterness towards the Dallas Stars? God,
no.
No. So we're still going to hear Norm Green sucks?
Of course we are. Yeah, okay. We're never going to get over that. And I think the younger fans have our producer Alex is a great kid, has no idea the pain watching an NHL team leave this market. I want to think back to that now. Having your team that you grew up with, the North Stars, taken away, and then a couple years later, seeing this beautiful building, the Met Center, which was an unbelievable place to watch
best hockey buildings in the world.
Way ahead of its time with a restaurant, the whole thing. Right. Watch that thing be imploded. I'm never going to get over it, and it fuels my passion for the game and my love of Minnesota Wild hockey, because 2003 was a big moment for this franchise. But for a lot of us of a certain age, it was a big moment for us to finally say, okay, I'm on board. And it took that long. Like, I was a season ticket holder for 5 or 6 years, and it took that long to say, all right, I'm going to put the ghosts of the North Stars and Norm Green aside. I'm going to embrace this right now. And it's been a love affair ever since. But what we haven't had is hockey in late May, hockey in early June, which we got to with the North Stars, and it was incredible.
As we wrap this up a little bit, how does John Hines approach these final 17, 18 games when you know basically where you're going to be? They're second or third. Obviously, you'd like to get the second spot, but you can't take your foot off the pedal. Hockey players aren't built that way to really kind of back off. Other than you mentioned, maybe there'll be some players that get a little extra rest because they're going to need everybody on hand, and they're at their best when the playoffs begin.
I think if you gave John Hines, Bill Guerin, and the coaching staff truth serum right now, they almost wish the playoffs were starting next week, because they're getting healthy. They're playing terrific hockey. I mean, they were hot going into the break. They came out, and you saw the big win right out of the break in Denver. And then you saw a couple of losses. The loss against St. Louis was a little bit like, what the heck? And then they come back this week. You mentioned it, Tampa, 5-1 win, go to Vegas, beat them pretty handily, and then go to Colorado and force a shootout, get 5 out of 6 points against those 3 teams. They're playing the type of hockey right now that you want to carry into the playoffs. So the challenge for John Hines is to keep this train rolling, keep that power play cooking, keep building chemistry, new faces. I think it's good for them to kind of integrate the personalities that they got at trade deadline to help them kind of mesh. And then for me, the 2 biggest factors, if they're going to beat Dallas, they're going to have to be healthy, and their goalies are going to have to be good. So right now you've got Gustafsson And if Wally's start yesterday in Denver's any indication, you've got a couple of guys ready to take off. Give them plenty of games down the stretch and let them stay where they are right now.
Is Kevin Gorg going to be very happy if on Derby Day you're going to be in St. Paul covering the Wild?
I'll be thrilled. I'll be thrilled.
Instead of
Preakness Day, Belmont Day, June 7th. If you want to take the Triple Crown away from me, knowing that this team is going to make a run, listen, I really have grown to appreciate the players involved. I love the core guys in this hockey team. And I'm thinking right now of a cup run, what it would mean to Jared Spurgeon and Jonas Brody and some of these longtime Wild players that I've covered from the day they came into the league. It would be extraordinary. And because they're such great human beings, I can kind of live vicariously through their fun. And I think this team's more than capable of doing it. Well,
as long as you've been doing this has got to be a blast for you.
It is so much fun.
And when you say, and you tell by anyone who watches you, Kevin, your raw enthusiasm comes through loud and clear. And that's the beauty of this business, because if you still have that enthusiasm like you did when you were back playing for Burnsville High School, and you can apply it in your own way at this point of your life, and to be around these guys, it adds to the enjoyment for not only you, but for the fans as well who are watching it.
Well, just think, Rosie, and obviously in your broadcasting career where you've been, but I'll go back to one of the really great moments. You got to be in Lake Placid and interview Herb Brooks. You end up, just like when you're coaching, you kind of live vicariously through the players you coach. When you're broadcasting, if you're with somebody for a long period of time, you end up kind of living the emotional roller coaster vicariously through them. And if you appreciate them and truly care about them and get to really respect the jobs they do and the people they are, which I do, it makes it that much more enjoyable. And so when Herb Brooks won that gold medal and you're there talking to Herbie, a Minnesota guy who you've known for years, you have a different perspective. And I think that's the same thing for all of us that cover the Wild, and we're on the team charter and we're in the hotel with them and we're at the rink and we see the ups and the downs. And I've covered these playoff losses and I've seen these guys brought to tears and I know how much they care. I mean, a guy like Jared Spurgeon, like this, you can't find a player that cares more about the team than our captain. And so you want to see them get there so bad. And so it does add a different element when you're working those games.
Is there one guy you get a kick out of? You do those in between period interviews quite a bit. I know you got to grab, you're grabbing people, and their minds are on the game, and yet they have the respect for you to sit and talk to you for a few minutes. Is there one guy that kind of like stands out in your mind who's always worth a quip or two?
100% Jake Middleton. He comes out, the whole tarps off thing, and then he had some commentary. I'm not going to repeat it on the podcast here, but there was a T-shirt.
Oh, you can repeat anything on the podcast.
Well, top something.
Well, I got you.
Yeah, 4x6. I mean, he's just such a unique guy. He speaks from the heart. He's just a lover of people and of the game, and he's so quirky and so honest. I mean, that's what you live for when you interview somebody. And so Jake would be the guy I would point to, but we got a lot. Marcus Foligno's got an unbelievable personality. Like it's a fun bunch of human beings.
I do have one more question for you too, because we watch what, they used to talk about Bud Grant being as stoic as possible on the sidelines for the Vikings. Every time they take a shot at John Hines on the Wild bench during the course of the game, you wouldn't know if they're up by 3 or down by 3. I don't know what his personality is behind the scenes, but he doesn't really change his expression very much, and it probably serves the team quite well. What are your thoughts of John? Because he doesn't get as much publicity, let's say, as Chris Finch, as obviously as KOC and the other coaches in this town.
He's a real low-key guy. Behind the scenes, you can see the fire that's certainly burning, how much he cares. But I think the team feeds off that poise that he shows, because hockey's such an emotional game, and there's so many shifts of momentum within these games, especially when you start to talk about the bigger games and you get to the playoffs. So I think that will serve the team well, because you've got a lot of fiery personalities. Ryan Hartman, I mentioned Marcus Foligno. These are guys that run real hot. And so I think he's a calming influence. He's very detailed. And of all the coaches I've covered, he's the closest one in the way he approaches the game to Jacques Lemaire. Jacques was the same way. Jacques was really hard to read on that bench, but you got behind closed doors and you asked him a question in private, he'd give you 20 minutes. Oh. And this guy's the same way. He burns, and I mean really burns for it. He's super competitive, but he's somehow able to do it. I could never do it as a coach when I coached high school and college hockey, but he is very calming on that bench.
Well, let's hope we'll be toasting down the road here for a long playoff run, and definitely we'll be checking back with you, Kevin, as we get closer to playoff time here in the Twin Cities, and as the sun gets brighter, as the days get longer, as we get warmer weather. let's hope we're looking and talking about hockey in May and June. Kevin Gorg, always a pleasure talking with you. Thanks so much for stopping by today.
So much fun to talk to you, Rosie, and let's keep those hopes alive. I think there's a cup run coming.
All right. I love to hear that. I'm sure all the fans do as well. You've been listening to Rosen Sports Monday. Enjoy your day. Thank you.